to the CHGO White Sox podcast, coming to you live on this Sunnyside Summer Thursday. This is the CHGO White Sox podcast. Head to sunnyside.shop or the nearest Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary and use code HICHGO, HICHGO, for 35% off your first order. Bright buys every day, only for 21 plus or Illinois medical card holders. This is a very special show. The CHGO Ranks content series is presented by Miller Lite. These are the top 10 White Sox games of all time. I'm your host, Sean Anderson. Alongside me, Vinnie Duber, our CHGO White Sox beat writer. You can follow him at Vinnie Duber. The man in the middle, Herb Lawrence.
Hello.
You can follow him at Ecknerwall23. He's our CHGO White Sox community leader. We're being produced today by Sarah.
I just have to say, I learned some things when I was making the graphics last night that I was unaware was in the history of the White Sox.
Did you have a favorite fun fact?
I do have a favorite fun fact.
Let's start with Sarah's favorite fun fact.
Whoa, she might spoil the...
Yeah, it's one of the
okay.
rankings.
Right,
yeah, I have a
we'll
favorite...
save Sarah's fun fact.
I have a favorite rank that I just didn't even know was a thing. Okay. So I'm excited.
All right, we'll get into Sarah's fun fact later. We are going to be ranking the top 10 games in White Sox history from 10 to 1. I think we do have some honorable mentions that we discussed and debated about but didn't make the top 10. Is there one that sticks out in your mind, maybe before the year 2005?
Ooh.
Do you want to give a 2005 game?
I don't know. I guess
what's the best 2005 game not to make the
really
list?
I don't know. See, I think this list is very interesting because obviously you have a team who had a very memorable run to a World Series. You're going to be hearing a lot about it over the course of this show, obviously. But the idea of the best games is like one that can be dissected right there, right? Like, if it's a best game, but it happened in May, should it be counted as a best game? Or because these ones were in October, are they so heavily weighted that they need to be on that end of the list? And so it's kind of, it kind of almost freezes you with the choice that you have to go through all of these. I'll throw out a regular season game that I was in attendance for, the 19-inning marathon between the White Sox and the Red Sox. Tadahito Iguchi walked it off in the bottom of the 19th. I believe that was the final game of the first half that year, and we moved so many times all over the stadium over the course of 19 innings that I think we probably sampled every view in the ballpark. We started on the fan deck. We were on the fan deck to start that game.
Wow. Jim Tomey's fan deck.
Yeah. Mine would be Philip Humber's perfect game. Amazing that it didn't make the list.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't tradition. Like, if you're talking about how that ranks up with all the rest of things, even Mark Buehrle's perfect game or no hitter, either one of the two, it's probably third out of those three, even under his no hitter. But I remember doing that game for the score, and I was like, this is getting pretty old hat for the White Sox. They've done a perfect game in the last 4 years. And they're just getting regular people like Philip Humber, who was a journeyman at that time, to do it in Seattle. And I remember the call from Ed Farmer on the Score Radio. He said, Philip Humber is throwing a perfect game at U.S. Cellular Field. And, of course, it was at Safeco. So our guy, Chris Tannehill, was doing the cutting up. He took that part out. So whenever you hear that radio call, you'll hear it in the edited version, not how it would happen where Ed Farmer forgot where he was for a second.
Well, and how could I forget shouting out before we get started here the fact that no-hitter made our list.
True.
A perfect game did. Oh, spoilers. But no-hitter made our list. Mark Buehrle's no-hitter did not make our list. Lucas Giolito's no-hitter did not make our list. Carlos Rodon's no-hitter did not make our list. So those guys deserve some props for doing that.
Do you have a favorite no-hitter of that bunch? Mine is Mark Buehrle's. The fact that he was the only player in Major League Baseball history to have 3 times facing the minimum, only 27 batters because he walked Sosa and then picks him off. That is easily the best, because that's the first no-hitter I've watched in its entirety. That was the best that I saw until later on. But yeah, that's my favorite of those 3.
My favorite is probably the Giolito of those, because barely anybody in the stadium. I think Vinny.
I was one of
in the stadium,
12 people who were there.
Yeah, and
I thought get the Les Scrubs bobblehead that says "I was there."
I was there, and once that ball was hit by Gonzalez, I was like, all right, that's the last hit. But, of course, Adam Engel on the spot right there, and to end it, it was such jubilation right there in 2020. I missed that. 2020 or 21?
That was 2020. And Rodon's also few people relatively in the park for that because they were still in the early part of the 2021 season when they were still restricting the attendance there. So not too many people there. Of course, I think everyone will remember Jose Abreu sliding into first base and looking like his knee was going to explode out of his body because he wanted to preserve the no-hitter so badly.
And, I think maybe we saw it too. I mean, maybe it took a while. It was a slow crumble from Abreu's knee, but maybe we could trace it all the way back to that moment. I unfortunately had to relive Game 3 of the wild card series of 2020 recently, and that box score is the funniest thing to look at in retrospect because Garrett Crochet pitches in that game and does not start because he wasn't a starter, and Carlos Rodon is a reliever in that game before he's no-hitter Carlos Rodon, before he's San Francisco Giant Carlos Rodon, before he's $183 million man Carlos Rodon on the New York Yankees.
And who was skipped out of the starting pitchers as to not start that game? Dylan Cease, who ended up finishing second in the Cy Young 2 years later.
I remember where I felt about Carlos Rodon at that time. I was like, yeah, that guy's cashed.
Yeah.
He's not going to pitch ever again. And especially after that game, I was like, man, this Carlos Rodon is trash.
They brought him back at the end of the year in that last week of the regular season where they blew that big lead in the division. My goodness, he pitched in a couple times in that Cleveland series, and balls just flying out of the ballpark against him.
The final one I'll throw out there, Charlie Robertson's perfect game. It was one of the first in Major League Baseball history. It was the first perfect game on the road. He faced a lineup with Ty Cobb and Harry Heilman. I know you guys love
I know
Harry
both
Heilman.
those guys personally.
And they were complaining that Charlie Robertson, in his fourth career start, was doctoring the ball during the game as well, and that they submitted several of the balls that Robertson threw to the American League to be like, hey, look at what he was doing, or to these balls, doctoring them. So Charlie Robertson, very much like Philip Humber, a forgotten White Sox, and obviously it was 100 years ago, so nobody remembers it because no one was alive, but he had a career ERA plus of 90, Philip Humber 81, so they're kind of in the same boat. Two White Sox players that have thrown a perfect game. I'll ask you this real quick. What's more impressive, 20 strikeouts or a perfect game?
20 strikeouts.
Ooh.
I said 20 strikeouts too, because there's only 5 instances.
Certainly far rarer.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think the drama of a perfect game is a little bit more. I think in the moment it's a little bit more like, is he going to do it? Is he going to do it? Is he going to do it?
And if you're talking specifically about Perry Wood's, 20 strikeout, or Mark Buehrle's perfect game, Kerry Wood's actual 20 strikeout where they gave a hit to a guy, which it should have been an error. It should have been a no-hitter and 20 strikeouts for Kerry Wood. That is the most dominant pitching performance I've ever seen. I don't know if it's going to be broken.
Yeah, I would say 20 strikeouts just because, again, I think you need the talent to do that. It's Scherzer, Randy Johnson, Kerry Wood, and then Clemens twice. So good job, Roger Clemens. And then, in the perfect game, you do have Mark Buehrle. You do have, name another one, David Wells.
Perfect games, people who have thrown perfect games, Phil Humber.
Right. Well, I was going to go, and then I was going to be like, and there's Charlie Robertson and Phil Humber.
Armando Galarraga.
Well, he didn't throw one, though.
Nope.
Yes,
I count
but
it.
It didn't. You're not fun. That's
counts.
not. I was thinking, like, Sandy Koufax throw a perfect game. Like,
well, also, how about this? Here's another thing. Here's another thing for your Kerry Wood over Buehrle situation there, if that's the way you're going. Who was the best player in that Rays lineup that Buehrle faced that day?
Jason Bartlett.
That you have to think about it is something.
Jason Bartlett, because he had the highest on base percentage and he was the last batter.
But Gabe Kapler was rocketing balls all day long.
There were 2 Hall of Famers in that Astros lineup that Kerry Wood carved up that day.
Killer bees.
In Bagwell and Baggio.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. All right.
A rainy May day.
I'm trying to figure. Yeah, Sandy Koufax threw one. Haha.
I'm sure he did. He's did everything. He's great.
Yeah, but I mean, but you have Kenny Rogers, you have Dennis Martinez.
I got to know when to hold him.
Tom Browning, Mike Witt, Len Barker. Like, Catfish Hunter is known, but like Don Larson's very famous. But like Addie Joss, I guess Addie Joss might have been good. But again, he's years ago. Randy Johnson would have worked. I forgot he had a perfect game.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the White Sox games. 10-1, we will take you through the top 10 Chicago White Sox game of all time. Number 10, October 7th, 2005, the El Duque game. The White Sox win 5-3 in Game 3 of the ALDS. They defeat the Boston Red Sox, and we could just take you through it. Freddie Garcia was cruising in a way. He did give up a home run to Manny Ramirez in the 4th, and then comes into the 6th and gives up another home run. Good old Ozzie Guillen pulls him for Damaso Marte. Damaso allows 3 straight base runners, and then Ozzie has to go to the bullpen again. He brings in El Duque, and Hernandez retires 3 straight batters with the bases loaded to keep the game at 4-3. The White Sox would later drive in a run in the 9th to make it 5-3, and then good old Bobby Jenks comes in, relieves El Duque, who continues to pitch into the 8th, and Bobby Jenks comes in and closes out the game.
I mean, it's really incredible when you look at the scope of the whole season. The White Sox bullpen was so good that year, but El Duque was in the rotation. He was not pitching out of the bullpen, and so this is the kind of moment that can only happen really in the postseason or in a game where the season is on the line, so to speak, because it's the only time manager is going to get desperate enough to do that. El Duque comes in and has the moment that gets thrown up on the statue that's still out front of the ballpark. That is one of the signature moments. Certainly, we're going to go through several more, but that is one of the signature moments of that run for the White Sox, that season for the White Sox, and that the biggest bullpen moment of the year came from someone who wasn't really part of the bullpen until the playoffs, is, again, very unique to the postseason.
Yeah, and it was a story that Kenny Williams didn't want him on the roster for the playoffs because he had like a 5 ERA as a starter for the White Sox that year. But Ozzie Guillen went to the table and said, no, Duque, he's a clutch guy. We need him. We need him in the playoffs as for that ALDS. You're facing the reigning champion Boston Red Sox. Yes, you won 2 games in Chicago, but as you saw them do the year before, 2-0 lead is nothing to them, and a 3-0 lead is nothing to the 2004-2005 Red Sox. So if the White Sox don't win that game, and what Duque does there, there's trouble there because they still have great pitchers still to come. They were throwing Matt Clement and garbage before that. I think you still have. I
believe David Wells started one of those games.
He
didn't
did,
he? Yeah.
and you probably
I think that's the game that kicked their ass.
Yeah,
that's the 12-2
14
game.
to whatever. It was
14.
nothing, but yeah. And so Duque coming into that performance and doing what he did, I think is. It's a forgotten moment that the White Sox needed, absolutely needed, and we'll go through some of these games in 2005. Of course, there's a lot of them that they needed for them to win that game, to win that World Series, because if they don't get that, I think the momentum shifts to Boston. There's another game in Boston there. You lose that one, you go back to Chicago feeling like, oh my God, we're losing to the reigning champions. They did this last year to the Yankees, and now they're doing it to us.
I think if you asked me before I looked at the box score of this game, if John Olerud was on the Red Sox at any point in his career, I would say no, but he was. I think to your point, I think that's very much like every White Sox fan's fear is, oh, if we lose this game, everything's going to go wrong. They were 11-1. Like, again, we have to think about it. Like, that it was tight, and there's a part of this El Duque part that we haven't brought up yet that made it even more tight and more suspenseful. But like, I don't know if it's over if they don't win this game. But the fact that Veritek's the first person that he faces, gets down to a 2-1 count, and on the 4th pitch gets that pop up to first base, and then Graffinino 10 pitch at bat, then gets a pop out, and then Damon, and both of the Graffinino and Damon ones are in 3-2 counts. Damon gets to 7 pitches, so it's not like an easy, oh, he got out in 3 pitches. It is foul off, it is balls, it is full counts, it is, if anything's on the border, you just hope the umpire's on your side to ring him up, because if not, there at least is going to be a tie ball game. So the fact that he just did walk that wire is insane. Connor sharing the Ed Farmer call in the chat. John Rooney saying, hocus pocus, says Hernandez. Farmer, you give him the cap, the cape, and the magic wand, because he'll make a rabbit out of his hat. I didn't do an Ed Farmer there, but can you do an Ed Farmer? You worked with him.
Yeah. Yeah. DJ, you go to school with any Unieskis? The 2-2.
All right. It's a good time to break. Thank you, Herb. And shout out to Ed Farmer. We want to let you know about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket place of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down closer to the closer it gets to first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Use the app features like customize your spot and supplement as inspiration to make sure that you get the best deal, because not only can they find you the lowest price tickets, but they can also find you some flash deals, some zone deals, and also the best views. Game Time has a fantastic and wonderful site that you should go check out. They do have last-minute deals. You could save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. And for the White Sox, I think that's a pretty smart idea. If you think you're going to go to the White Sox game, there's going to be tickets. Just wait until 1:05 for a 1:10 game. Wait until 7:05 for a 7:10 game. There you go. And then you got your ticket. You can walk right in. Guess I'm in the front row. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time. Last minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed.
Sometimes things need to change. One thing that doesn't, the great taste of Miller Lite. It's the original light beer, and to this day, it's still the best one. Miller Lite has more than taste it has the taste that you want and less of the stuff that you don't. When I'm out there and my people hand me a Miller Lite like I have right to my left, there's nothing better than being handed that because it goes down smoothly and never lets you down. Because it's got a great, light, refreshing taste that's less filling than other beers. Miller Lite keeps it simple. Undebatable quality, great taste, only 96 calories. It's the beer that strips away everything you don't need and everything that you want. They keep it in there because that's what matters most. A light beer that tastes like beer. The original light beer since 1975. No matter how your team changes, you can always enjoy the great taste of Miller Lite. Tastes like Miller Lite and tastes like Miller time. To get the Miller Lite delivered to you right to your door, visit miller.com/CHGO football, or you can find it anywhere else they sell beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories per 12 ounces. And it's a Chicago beer. I know it says Milwaukee, but when I think about Miller Lite, I think about Chicago because every stadium you go to has Miller Lite flowing.
You're not going to give me something I could chant yes after? I was just so geared up to do something after a beer hat.
I tell you what, Miller Lite goes down smooth.
All right, let's get into game number 9. The Duque game was fantastic, and it was a fantastic game to watch. Just the back and forth. You get 2 Manny Ramirez home runs. Come on. Who doesn't love baseball?
This, by the way, this was the one that I thought was most interesting.
Okay.
I didn't even know this was I didn't know this was the thing.
So we'll teach some history. Number 9, maybe you weren't around, like Sarah, May 8th and 9th of 1984. The 25-inning game between the Chicago White Sox and Milwaukee Brewers. Harold Baines, Hall of Famer Harold Baines, walks off the Milwaukee Brewers. The next day, the crowd goes home in the 25th inning.
Did they have to stay? Did they have to sleep overnight?
They did. And you know, it was nice that Jerry Ryan, it wasn't a lot of, people don't tell this story a lot, but Jerry Reinsdorf actually had 20,000 sleeping bags ready to go for people to just lie down. They did have to lie down and popcorn, beer. Oh, I was thinking in the stands. But
I just can't believe. Imagine the people working that, like people like us. Like, what if we had to wait for the game? It was 8 hours and 6 minutes.
Strapped to these chairs.
That's like all I was thinking about.
I feel bad for people like Vinnie that have to be there early for the game and then stay until the game is done. Ugh.
It's funny, a game like this, and there are others that other teams have played throughout history that last similarly high number of innings. It's when you go to the 10th, everybody's like, "Ugh, this game is going longer. You got to be kidding me." The 11th, and then it starts to go back up because then it's like, well, how long can it go now? Mm-hmm. And there's another marathon coming up later in our list. Obviously, I shouted out the 19-inning game earlier. I mean, like, there's a point. I'm not sure what inning it is, but there's a point where it goes from this is too long to this is so long.
Yeah, literally. Well, there's rules apparently. This is a write-up from Saber. Baines grounds out to the second to end the 17th on the 506th pitch of the game. It was 1:03 a.m., and AL rules called for the game to be suspended. Tom Seaver, quote, "When it's 1 a.m., it's time for little kids and ball players to be in bed." Brewers manager Renee Lachman bemoaned, "We should have won that game in 9. We didn't play very good defense, and we didn't have base running." And the game would quickly resume in 17 hours at 6:30 before the next game. They were out there going until 25 innings when Harold, again, walks them off in the 25th inning. It is the longest game ever played at 8 hours and 6 minutes. That is 2 pre-pitch clock games worth of baseball there. And Sarah, if you just want to flash that up, I think it's the second actual longest, second most innings in Major League Baseball history. There was a game in like 1894 that was 26 innings, and it was 220.
What?
Oh yeah, no, like
2 hours and 20 minutes.
There's a 26 inning baseball game, and it's just like not even. It's 1920. It was the Brooklyn Dodgers versus the Boston Braves, and I'll try to get the game time on it. I can't find it right now.
But it was under 3.
It was under. It's baseball in the 20s. It has to be.
Ground out. Ball's just heavy as hell.
Time of game 350.
350.
So
still,
not
really
even,
long,
not
but
even,
not
half of this game.
I mean, we had 350 regular 9-inning games like 3 years ago.
Yeah,
Right.
Absolutely, we did.
So thank you, pitch clock.
It's good. It's good. I will say this: it's good to get a little bit of variety here in our list because, as you see, this is going to be very obviously 2005 heavy, but very 21st century heavy as well. So it's nice to get one in there and shout out a franchise legend like Harold Baines and point to another era of White Sox baseball and make sure there's some variety in there.
Absolutely. And I think, too, I try to force some games in there. There is the infamous 1919 World Series, and reading about that game, they knew from the first pitch that it was going to be a rigged World Series. I think it was Ed Walsh, and he throws it behind the first batter. Or Seacott, and he throws it behind the first batter, and that's the signal to it. But again, that's not like the coolest game. Like, I don't even know.
It's also bad. Didn't they lose?
Right. Well, and they were also criminals.
Right.
So yeah, 25 innings, much cooler. Only 23 hits too for the White Sox. 20 hits for Milwaukee. So I mean, it wasn't even a hit per inning. So I don't know if it was the best baseball game to watch, but it was definitely the longest. And I think if you watch 25 innings or 24 innings of baseball, you have to watch the 25th. And maybe that's a pretty sweet payoff for that Harold Baines one. All right, game number 8. We'll go back to 2005, October 12th, 2005. Game 2 of the 2005 ALCS. Sox win 2-1. I saw a lot of talk on social media that this game should be higher, and I asked you guys about it, and I got no response in the text thread. So we're going to talk about it on the podcast. Mark Buehrle pitches a complete game, 9 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 earned run, no walks, 4 Ks. AJ reaches on first because of the drop third strike call. You might think it wasn't a drop third strike. You might think it was a drop third strike, but we're talking about it because it was a drop third strike.
It was ruled a drop third strike.
It was ruled a drop third strike. The White Sox stay alive. Pablo Ozuna subs in for AJ as the pinch runner, and Joe Creedy gaps a double, and Pablo Ozuna scores. Sox win 2-1. It was a fantastic game. Is this the other turning point for the White Sox, or is it, Jermaine Dye's game-winning hit in Game 4 of the 2005 World Series that was the true turning point?
I mean, this is the turning point because they had lost Game 1. Paul Bird shoved it up their ass because Paul Bird is great against the White Sox. And if the White Sox lose this game, they go to Anaheim for 3 games, and Anaheim would have probably did some damage versus the White Sox up 2-0. So I think it's ranked as high as it is, and why I haven't ranked it higher, because it's pretty much the drop third strike is where people have the focus at. No one else can really tell you what happened in the rest of that game, as there wasn't a lot of action. I mean, Mark Buehrle pitched a complete game because he went 9 innings, but the Joe Creedy walk-off, you can remember that, and you can remember the drop third strike. But other than that, I don't think anybody else remembers really what happened in that game throughout. There's other games up here that not just a single moment. There's several moments in those games where that's why those games are higher than this one is.
I'll take a little bit more of a bird's eye view at that, Herb, to talk about what you're saying there and say, but what is the thing of the ALCS for the White Sox? It was the entire series because of how great the starting pitching was, right? And so if you do want to shrink it down to a game, that's the game you're picking. And that was that. I mean, 2-1, that's a great game, first of all. And then it has obviously the wild ending that will always be remembered. That is the moment that I remember watching of that playoff run the most. That is the moment that I have an actual memory of watching on TV the most, compared to everything else, including what happened in the World Series. So I think that it is a moment and a game that helps sum up Mark Buehrle and the consistent excellence that he was throughout his White Sox career, as well as A.J. Pierzynski and what he did. I mean, if there are 2 A.J. moments that stick out from his White Sox career, what are they? They're that and him getting punched in the face. Yeah. And, I mean, for a guy with AJ's, reputation and legacy, not only in Chicago, but in baseball. Those are kind of so great to celebrate as the 8 biggest AJ moments in a White Sox uniform.
So let's talk about this game, number 8 versus number 7. Number 7, game 3 of the 2021 ALDS, October 10th, 2021 run. You get homers in the 3rd inning from Yasmani and Leury Garcia to give the Sox a 6-5 lead. They were down, but the White Sox came back, and they were getting beat up pretty well by the Astros in this series. Tepera, Bummer, Kimbrel, and Hendricks come in the last 5 innings, and are perfect. No hits, no walks, no earned runs, 9 strikeout. It was the first playoff win since 2005, and I guess some people count the Blackout Game as a playoff game. Technically, it's not, but that's still even the first playoff game since then. So 2021 to 2008, still a very long time.
Here's what I'll say in comparison to the Blackout Game is the thing you remember about this game is the crowd.
Yes.
Obviously, the game was excellent. I was just explaining before we started about how, talking about it, they go up early, they blow that lead right away, they go down, then they come back. I mean, the game is good, right? But then the crowd, I think, is the thing that sticks out. God, were White Sox fans hungry to have a playoff win, especially, after so long, like you're talking about. And that vibe is what you remember, and you remember that making it great. I know, folks might not have the fondest memories of Tony La Russa's second go-round as the manager of the White Sox, but he was the manager of the White Sox during that game. And to this day, he says the greatest atmosphere he's ever experienced, ever, in his Hall of Fame career that has been going since the 70s, right, was that game. He said more so than the World Series games he played with and won with the Cardinals. That game right there, Game 3 of the 2021 ALDS, is what Hall of Fame manager Tony La Russa, who's won more games than basically every other person in the history of the game, said is the greatest atmosphere he's ever been a part of.
And think of all the things that created that atmosphere. We have the first home playoff game since 2008. The first home victory since 2005. This is the apex of the rebuild that was promised in 2016. And then we go through a whole pandemic of 2020, and people are hungry. They didn't get to see the playoff game in 2020 because all those games were in Oakland. They're hungry to see their team. And so it was a blackout, and it was electric. And when the Leury Garcia home run happens, we're in the same place. We're at the score, me, you, and Chris Tannehill, and we hear the crowd, and ourselves, we're going absolutely wild. That's, I think, one of the reasons why Leury Garcia got a $16.5 million contract, because he produced that excitement. Only one game. That's the only game they won that series, but you couldn't tell me that the White Sox weren't, and their fans weren't thinking, yes, this is what we needed. It was only one win at home, which the next game, they got beat pretty handily by the Astros. And it was just everything that had led up to that moment. The fans are ready for celebration. As we talk about all the time, they've been to the playoffs 11 times. So when the White Sox do get into the playoffs, fans show up, and they are loud as hell.
You bring up Leury getting that contract. Do you know who should have been the first ever $100 million man in White Sox history after his performance in 2005?
2005?
Juan Uribe, baby.
Yes.
Come on. I mean, let's go. I mean, that man put his body on the line for the White Sox. I think, at least personally, this game means more to me because what you said, like, this was the first ever professional time. It was like, I get to prove myself. I get to be, producing a show for my team with my guys, Chris and Herb, and it's their moment too to be like on the air, like, and taking what they did from Lockdown White Sox like to the air and like let's actually make something and do something. And the fact that they were down to start just made us all sick, and we were just feeling awful. And then you finally get the comeback, and it's not just a comeback. You win by 6 and you kick the Astros' ass. It just felt so cathartic. And I think especially in the moment, looking back on 2021, it felt like, oh, this is this team's potential.
Yep.
And that felt untouchable in 2021. Because I know the Tony La Russa stuff brought the vibe down, but the team still won 93 games and an AL Central championship. If you're telling me in 2024 or 2025 that the team is winning an AL Central championship, I am very, very excited. I'm not going to, take those for granted anymore, because I could see that even what we were promised, You only have one of those looking back on it. And that's the most sour thing, because that team was so fun. And I think that 2005 gets its credits, gets its flowers, but 2021 we're feeling a little salty about, so it doesn't get the same amount of love. And I think that's a little unfair. All right, let's get into our next break, and we'll get into the top 6 of our top 10 White Sox games. We want to let you know about our friends over at Indeed. Indeed is driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed just doesn't help you hire faster. 93% of employers agreed. Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is consistently learning from your preferences, so the more that you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ALLCITY. Just go to Indeed.com/ALLCITY right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/ALLCITY. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Make Ray Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram your #1 draft pick this summer to find the perfect new car for you. This July, shop a wider selection of vehicles at Ray CDJR and score new lower prices across their huge inventory during the Make This the Summer event. For a limited time, lease the new 2024 Jeep Compass Latitude Luxe for only $189 a month, or shop over 125 vehicles priced under $20,000. Let the amazing team at Ray CDJR help you land the perfect vehicle at the perfect price, because with Ray's Price Promise, the numbers you're hearing now are the same prices you can expect to shop in-store and online. That's because Ray's Price Promise means no price changing, no add-ons, and no hidden fees. Since they prioritize affordability for their customers, hurry into Ray CDJR today and shop one of the Chicago area's largest inventories. Then drive home with more money in your pocket than you'd expect. So, if you're in the market for a new vehicle, then you have to check out the team at Ray Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram, because they are the only team we recommend. Visit them today on Route 12 in Fox Lake. For more information, visit Ray CDJR in Fox Lake or raycdjr.com. Serving the community since 1963.
Remember Kane Guy?
Yes.
Yes.
They made a whole
You got a bobblehead.
Got a bobblehead.
Yeah.
It's $2,700 right now. You want to buy it from White Sox auctions.
Great.
You could get a better deal at Ray CDJR.
Probably. Alejandro shouting out your style, Vinny.
Thanks, Alejandro.
The super chat. Thank you for the super chat, the $5 super chat. Vinnie Duber doesn't get enough credit for his fashion choices. Cheap Trick, Protect Our Forest, Howling Wolf, I See You, Vinny. There you go.
Thank you, Alejandro.
Showing off the threads. Let's get into our top 6. Why is it top 5? It's not even an even number.
It's half of 10.
That's a good point. Number 6, the Field of Dreams game. August 12th, 2021. Tim Anderson hits his Hollywood walk-off homer. You also have the Yankees scoring 4 in the top of the 9th with 2 homers to give a little bit of drama. And the Fox broadcast drew 5.9 million viewers, which is a lot for baseball in 2021, post-pandemic. It was one of the most important baseball games, I think, probably of the past 15 years. In a weird way, like that was the time that I really felt all of the eyes were on baseball, more than an all-star game has done in a very long time.
More than a World Series has done in a very long time. And obviously the novelty of it is what got people there in the first place. But boy, the folks who turned in for the novelty were rewarded with one of the better baseball games you'll ever see, one of the most exciting baseball games you'll ever see. I was there. It was so hot in the middle of that cornfield in Iowa. I think I sweat all the sweat I possibly could and then started sweating again. But again, worth it. That was probably the coolest thing I've ever covered, and it was because of the game. Absolutely. Yeah. If the Field of Dreams game, I would have gone out to cover that, and it would have been a run-of-the-mill baseball game, just 3-1, and one of the pitchers were good kind of thing. I don't think I would have as fond a memory of it. It's the way that game went. All the home runs that were hit by everybody. Let's not forget, I think that the thing that gets forgotten the most about that game, Michael Kopech comes in and with an amazing relief performance while he's pitching out of the bullpen that year. A little bit of foreshadowing for later in his career. But listen, the game was just tremendous. The ending was incredible. It was one of those goosebump moments, whether you were probably like you guys hoping that team would win, or like me, didn't care who would win. It was a goosebump moment because the game was so great and the ending was so phenomenal.
Yeah, and the one thing that I remember the most is both Liam Hendricks was a lockdown closer that year, but he came in that game to close it out and gave up the lead there in the ninth inning. I remember he was mic'd up in the bullpen before that. He was talking to the broadcast crew. I was like, all right, this game's over. Yankees are losing by 4 in the ninth. We got this. Or by 3 in the ninth. We got this game. And he gives it up. You get to the bottom of the ninth, Sebi Zavala with the bat of the game up to that point where he draws a long walk, I believe, and gets on first base for the Tim Anderson walk-off there. And I think he also hit a home run in that game. Sebi Zavala, best game of his career.
Bring him back.
Not even true. He hit 3 homers in a one game. Come on.
First the Yankees, too?
First the Yankees, yes.
So he just loves the Yankees. But then you get Zach Britton, one of the best relievers in the game when he was an Oriole, not necessarily as a Yankee. And then Tim Anderson's like, first pitch, I'm going to crush this to right field. And his reaction, the fireworks, everything that happened in that game right then, it was like, our team is here. This is like the exclamation point of the White Sox are here to stay. Everybody's predictions of this team being the team of the 20s is coming to true. So sad now to think that's not true anymore, because that was just a great moment for the White Sox and kind of like putting them on a national perspective of, if people were kind of skeptical of them because how they went out in 2020 to the Athletics. Now they're beating the Yankees, the vaunted Yankees, on a national stage, and did it well. Now, I don't think that was their only win that year versus the Yankees, but they did it in dramatic fashion, and I'll take that every time. Tim Anderson will have a special place on my heart no matter what because of that moment.
Absolutely. And I think just to drive home the Yankee part too, I don't know why I dislike the Yankees so much, but I really do.
Most baseball fans do.
A charter franchise of the AL, and you just look at the other, like my charter franchise of the AL, and they're so successful. They have 27 World Series. The White Sox have 11 playoff appearances, over 125 seasons. Like, I am sick of their success. And the fact that they almost came back, and the fact that, you know, it was a close game and you had all this momentum, and then going into the ninth inning, you just kind of have this, you know, sick turn in your stomach. And the fact that our guy at that time, who was MLB's biggest star, which baseball media would say, comes out and hits that walk-off, I don't think that you could write a better ending. I think even if it was Abreu, I mean, Abreu led off the homer, or the game with a homer. Like, if you flip it and TA leads off the game with a homer and Abreu walks it off, I think it feels a little bit worse. I don't know. There's something about TA and the way he owns that moment, and with the, you know, it's over and the fireworks going off behind him, such a cinematic moment that is ingrained into my mind, like most of these games are. Going to our top 25 list from CHGO, the Blackout Game's at 25. The Field of Dreams game is at 23. Our fifth game is the Blackout Game. Game 163, September 30th, 2008. Jim Thome scores the only run with a mammoth homer to Vinny's CIBC fan deck. John Danks and Bobby Jenks go for 9 innings pitched, 2 hits, 0 runs, 5 Ks, and the Sox win the AL Central title with Game 163 tiebreaker against those damn Minnesota Twins. Is this game better than the Field of Dreams game? Why is this game better? They're both regular season games. Is it the fact that this was 163 do or die?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I believe also, and I've said this before, it was unfair that the White Sox got awarded that game at home because the Minnesota Twins that year dominated the White Sox in the head-to-head matchups. It subsequently has been changed to, if they do have that, which I don't think they can do it anymore because they don't do 163 anymore, but in between the times that that game and then when they changed the rule, the team with the best head-to-head would have the home game. So I'm glad they gave it to the White Sox because just like the Game 3 in 2021, that was the first Blackout Game, and it was loud and electric there. You got the home run from Thome that I still think if not the longest home run in White Sox history. It's one of the top 3. I don't think it's named as such. I think they still got it as who was that guy? Joe Borcher, which, no, stop it. You get the Ken Griffey Jr. throwing out either Justin Morneau or Michael Kadire at the home plate, and his probably one of his only great things he did as a White Sox. It was like medium center field. Ken Griffey Jr. on his last legs throws him out, preserves the lead there for the White Sox. And then the last play, where you have Brian Anderson making a diving catch to get the AL Central crown there for 2008. And we hadn't been in the playoffs for 3 years, and it was a big-time relief that the White Sox and Ozzie Guillen got back to the playoffs. Now, summarily dismissed quickly by the Tampa Bay Rays, but that game, just electric. Everybody loved that game and that memory, and I think that game specifically made the decision for Jerry Reinsdorf a little easier. Give the money to John Danks. Don't give the money to Mark Buehrle a couple years after that.
Another one that's remembered, obviously, for the crowd and the way that the atmosphere was at that game. I wasn't even in the state for it. I was down at college at Mizzou, and my RA that year was from the Chicago suburbs, big White Sox fan. And so he gathered everybody in the common room, and he bought a box of Twinkies, and he was going to smash a Twinkie for every run the White Sox scored. He got to do it one time. And so
that one time felt great.
Oh, he really wound up on it for sure. But listen, a tremendous game. I'm glad you shouted out Ken Griffey Jr. I think I saw our Instagram post, of this where it was in our big countdown, and it said, Tomey, Danks, Jenks. Everyone remembers the stars of the Blackout Game, and I'm at home like, Griffey,
Brian Anderson,
Number 17.
Yes. I think that Game 163 is probably the answer because it's the best White Sox representation. I think Field of Dreams is a better Major League Baseball representation. I think it's a better baseball game, but like that, it's similar to the 2001 game. You get the fan representation. You get the energy from that crowd.
And you can't argue with win or go home. Come on.
You also can't argue with a Jim Tomey homer, the moon.
And that banner flies forever.
So does the plaque. I mean, the plaque doesn't fly, but that plaque is there. I mean, unless they go build the 78, that's going to stay there, that fan deck. All right, let's go to Game 4 on our list. Game 3 of the 2005 World Series, October 25th, 2005. We go 14 innings in Houston. Jeff Blum's only at-bat in the series is a 14th inning home run, and Mark Buehrle's drunk butt comes out of the clubhouse to save the game in 14 innings. It was the longest World Series game in history until 2018 at 5 hours and 41 minutes. That 2018 game is pretty cool. It's nice, but I don't know. There's something about Jeff Blum. I that moment happens, and you talked about memories being ingrained in your moment or your brain. My mom had like a little tube TV. It wasn't even like an LCD. Still had bunny ears in the back. Like it was a little fuzzy still. Still got picture, and that's what I watched Jeff Blum's homer on. And like I got to stay up to watch this game at I think probably 1 a.m. when Tom Seaver saying kids shouldn't be up, and there I was watching Jeff Blum hit a homer.
And that I'm glad you brought that up. That should be October 25th - October 26th because they won 2 games that on October 26th. I remember that. But yeah, you get all those things, and people tend to forget the Astros had a lead in that game. I think 4-0 or 5-0 early with Roy Oswalt pitching on the bum. And the White Sox came back and I think took the lead. AJ Przinsky's double that hit high up on Tiles Hill, which was still a thing back then, which would have been a home run at any other ballpark. They came back and got that win, or they got that lead off of one of the toughest pitchers in baseball at the time in Roy Oswalt. So at the time when the Astros got that lead, I was like, oh, man, all right, we got our first 2 at home, and this one's going to be a L. So let's go for the Game 4. Let's focus on Brandon Backey. But the White Sox had no quit that year, and that whole series and the whole season was a fairy tale. Anything they did turned into gold. Players got hurt. The replacement did well. Like you got Dustin Hermanson hurt. You get Shingo Takatu hurt. Bobby Jenks just steps up as a rookie and just gets the job done.
I mean, you can understand why White Sox fans are hungry to have more moments like this, not because of the time separation, but because you remember every little aspect of it and because they are so special, right? So, I mean, like I was saying earlier about the El Duque moment, Mark Buehrle's coming in to save a game in 14 innings. He's the best pitcher on your team, and he's coming in at the end of this after drinking a beer. That he adds even more legend to it. And think about the role that these role players play. Jeff Blum lives forever in White Sox history. Not just because he was good for a little bit, because he had one at bat and he hit a game-winning home run with it. I mean, you can go around baseball and think of these moments. If you're a Cub fan and you watched that 2016 run, they had those little moments from those little guys. I mean, who was the last guy on the mound for them when they won the World Series?
The Cubs?
Yeah,
Mike Montgomery,
exactly. I mean, Steve Pearce won the World Series MVP for the Boston Red Sox. I mean, like you were listing all those randos who were part of the Red Sox roster in 2005. I mean, these are things that happen in the playoffs that do not happen during the regular season, and that's why they are historic. Is because baseball has these moments in October that are just so special.
Is Jeff Blum, Astros broadcaster Jeff Blum, more famous in Houston or Chicago?
Houston,
because he played for there.
Well, and he's on TV every day.
Literally, one at bat just made him etched.
Right, guaranteed.
Yeah,
right. Whenever he comes back to Chicago, people are like, "Thank you, Jeff Blum." Every single time.
I would shake his hand today. All right, let's get into game number 3. A man that I would be very happy to shake his hand or even drink a beer with. Our guy, Mark Buehrle, at number 3. Mark Buehrle's perfect game, July 23, 2009, the 19th perfect game, or the 18th perfect game in Major League Baseball history, the second White Sox perfect game in history at the time, after Charlie Robertson, later followed by Umber. Dwayne Wise makes the catch to rob Gabe Kapler of his 9th inning home run to preserve the perfect game, and this was the 3rd time that Buehrle faces the minimum in his career. I've told this story before. A very young 12-year-old Sean Anderson, I guess 11-year-old Sean Anderson, was in a maroon jumpsuit in the left field bleachers during this time. I was at Brother Ice summer camp, and I was soaked in sweat. The only thing that I had with my maroon shirt was maroon sweatpants. My dad was like, "You want to go to a baseball game?" And I was like, "Sure." And my friend Vinny was like, "Oh, I can't go." So we dropped Vinny off, and then we were late to the first inning, and we're walking in the back concourse behind the CIBC fan deck, and I look up at that old scoreboard that they had where it was the black and like kind of yellow print on it. And it was a 0 in the Rays first frame. And it said no hits, no errors. And I looked at my dad and said, "Hey, we're going to see a perfect game today." And then cut to 8 innings later, I'm hyperventilating into a Dippin' Dots bag because here's Dwayne Wise going up the wall to make the catch against Gabe Kapler. I've never watched that game in full back in its entirety because I don't need to. I think I remember every single moment as clear as day. The Josh Fields grand slam is the coolest home run I've ever seen hit in my life because it was right there. He went into the bullpen and I was there at 161. It was so cool. Buehrle was 10th on the top 25 CHGO list. It's number 1 in my heart. It's the coolest damn game ever. But it's 3rd on this list. And Mark Buehrle's perfect game made me a Mark Buehrle stan forever. There he is, right over there.
And technically, I was at that game too. I was working at the Score.
Technically.
Did
you send your astral form to the game or something like that?
Yeah. The Score sent me out because the Score had the radio rights at the Sox at the time to produce a I think it was McNeil and Spiegel show that was doing a broadcast from the ballpark, so in the Ranji booth. And so I was there as a remote producer. And then our sports director, Chris Collins, called me back to the Score studios at the time at NBC Tower to do some extra tape or some extra work. And so I was there early, and I had to leave at 12:30. I think that game started at 1:10, and I had to go back to the Score studio. Once I finished up my work, I watched the rest of the game at the Score studios and booked it as soon as that last out happened because I didn't want Mitch Rosen to say, "Hey, cut stuff up, hold on, hurry up." It's like, nope, I already seen the thing. And then later, I got a ticket from one of the sales reps of that day from the Score to say that I was actually there at that game. I think I have it somewhere in my closet somewhere. But I was at the game, and 20 years from now, I'll be telling my kids, "Hey, I was at that game. I watched every inning. I was at there."
You'll be lying to them.
Yeah, don't even trip, kids. Come on now. You know your dad was there.
I know where my tickets are. They're in the shadow box my dad got made. So there you go.
Wow. That's where they belong. That's where they belong.
Hey, I don't know. I didn't ask for it. They just showed up one day, and there they were.
Mark Buehrle, obviously, was fantastic. The Dwayne Wise catch will live forever in everybody's mind. I I would like to take the opportunity to shout out Hawk Harrelson.
There it is.
For those of us who weren't at the game, Hawk is famous for having things that he said over and over and over again, right? His home run call, some of the intricacies that White Sox fans to this day obviously repeat all the time. These were calls, specific calls on a specific day that he made that everybody can recite by heart. They are like quotes from a movie. You know, they are not just, here's your favorite character in a TV show's catchphrase that he said 1,000 times. They are, remember that one time he said this one thing, and now we say it every day all the time. I mean, it is it is a broadcast that will live as legendary as the performance was, just because that's how so many people ingested it that day. You two not being a part of that, but I remember fondly. Call your sons, call your daughters, to go along with everything else. Probably the thing that I laugh about the most all the time is interrupting Steve Stone during the replay of the Dwayne Wise catch, just shouting random things that came to his head. So a tremendous memory of not just what happened on the field, but everything surrounding it for that particular game.
Alexei!
History! Yes!
Like 5 yeses.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
And then Southpaw. Ugh, you're ruining it. That's good. Southpaw bringing up that cardboard 0. Just janky ass 0 on the floor. Yeah, I like Hawk Harrelson. Like, to this day, if anybody's doing a perfect game past the 6th inning, I'm calling my non-existent sons and daughters right now
Cancel
so they
the
can watch
postgame
this
show.
game. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point by you to bring up Hawk, because I mean, obviously that final call, everyone can just scream Alexei with him. And I know too. Sorry, I know people give a lot of credit to Hawk on being in the moment, and I know sometimes it takes him out of the game too because he's not talking for 5 minutes. Oof. But also that's the kind of part that you appreciate. I have watched the 9th inning, and there's not a lot of Hawk outside of Hawk reacting, and that part I think is underrated of Hawk's broadcasting.
All the time when I refer to Dwayne Wise, I refer to him as Dwayne Weiss, because our former president, who was supposed to be a White Sox fan, is like, yeah, Dwayne Weiss, great job.
Yes.
You don't know who he is.
No, he was not watching the
I mean,
White
he had
Sox
to
game.
do things, whatever.
Connor bringing up, Buehrle was 3-1 on the second, in a 3-1 count on the second to last batter.
Catcher. I forgot who his name was.
I was going to ask you.
Deoner Navarro?
Mikel Hernandez.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then last batter who grounds out to Alexei?
Jason Bartlett.
Jason Bartlett, yeah.
We know that.
On the Sports Illustrated cover.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the second game on our top 10 list. Game 4 of the 2005 World Series, October 26th. The second game they win on October 26, 2005. Jermaine Dye with a game-winning single right back up the middle that just trickles on through in the 8th inning. Juan Uribe throws his body into the stands in the bottom of the 9th to preserve that one-run lead, and the Sox break the 88-year-old World Series drought, winning their first World Series since so long ago. I was going to say the exact year, and I was going to say 1917, and that's the right year. Okay. All right. 1906 is the other one?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, yeah, 1906 versus the Cubs.
All right, cool. Let's
They
go.
beat the Cub.
I know my White Sox history, but yes, Game 4, the moment where they win the World Series. This is the best game, or this is not the best game in my opinion. I think you think it is, though.
I do, because of what we were talking about earlier. We were talking about Field of Dreams against the Blackout Game. This is the ultimate. You won a World Series. The first time any White Sox fan at that time pretty much was alive to see the White Sox win in the World Series. Like, somebody must have been really, really old.
There were some 88-year-olds out there.
17. I mean, they probably didn't see it as their children. But, like, that's what like the 1-0 score, how well it was pitched by Freddie the Rock Garcia and Brandon Backey. You got the Juan Uribe play. Then I think we are doing a show with the Top 25 show that somebody brought up. If it's done by anybody else, especially like Derek Jeter, that play is one of the greatest plays in World Series history, where the man goes into the stands for the penultimate out of the World Series and catches the ball. There's a runner that could score or that could advance, and he still, heads up to let that runner know that he's there, and he's got them clocked. And so you get the Bobby Jenks all out. He gets the ground out to Uribe. Uribe charges, throws out. the White Sox win the World Series. That's what I remember, the John Rooney call, not the Joe Buck call, even though I'm not a hater. Like, when they win the World Series, it's like exaltation. The 12-year-old Herb that first became a White Sox fan is happy for the 26-year-old that actually got to see it happen. And so that's why I think it's the best game in White Sox history. And I understand why the number one game that we have chosen is number one because of all the elements that happen in that game. But this, to me, is the best game in White Sox history for all the reasons I just said and more.
It's hard to argue with the game that wins the World Series being the best one, right?
Yeah.
And certainly that is a fine point. There's another play that sticks out so much in my mind is Uribe making that catch, and it's on top of the statue. I get to see it every day when I walk into the ballpark too. A good game. I mean, 1-0.
Yeah.
But that gets maybe that gets downplayed a little too much. 1-0 is a heck of a ball game. And, we were talking about our big list and, reminiscing about some playoff hockey, and how you're constantly on the edge of your seat all the time waiting for something, even if it's a low scoring or a no scoring game. That's how World Series baseball feels like too, especially when it drags on, right? So if it's 0-0 in the third inning, maybe you're not as tense. When it's 0-0 in the eighth inning, you're very tense. And so for any player, but in this case, Jermaine Dye to break that tie, that had to be like you said, a moment of relief for White Sox fans. And certainly then you get Uribe not only going over the stands on the second to last out, making the throw on the final out, an obvious selection to be near the very top of our list.
And let's go to the top of our list because we could talk just about the 2005 World Series now. Game number 1 of the top 10 Chicago White Sox games of all time. Game 2 of the 2005 World Series, October 23rd, 2005. Paul Konerko with his 7th inning grand slam gives the Sox a 4-2 lead. Bobby Jenks, he wasn't the closer again. It was Dustin Hermanson. He has to come in and replace him. And Bobby Jenks, one of his few road bumps as the 2005 closer for the White Sox, surrenders at 2 runs in the 9th inning to tie the game. But then Scott Podsednik gets his first White Sox home run to give the White Sox a 7-6 win and a 2-0 series lead. This has to be, it's either this or the Blum, which just kind of makes you feel, all right, they're winning this.
Yeah.
Right? I mean that's what I remember after game 2 is they won the World Series, basically. And then obviously there's more later on. But there was just something about being 2-0 in that, having a 9-1 record. I felt if Scott Podsednik, of all people, is hitting a home run, there is no way we are not destined to win the World Series. And they were.
Incredible. A go-ahead grand slam in the 7th inning of a World Series game.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason that's what the statue is of Paul Konerko over on the concourse at Guaranteed Rate Field. And then, like you said, Scott Podsednik. You can't write that. You can't write the guy's going to hit his first home run. The guy who you brought in, not for the power, the guy who traded the power hitter away to get so you could get him zipping along the bases and not even worry about it putting out of the ballpark. Game-winning home run from that guy. Of course, you can't write it, and that is why that is the best game, in my opinion, in White Sox history as well. Between the Konerko home run and the Podsednik home run, those are 2 iconic moments.
And Jared Ash is that Scotty's only home run that season. It was his 2nd home run that season. He had hit one in the game we were talking about earlier, I think, off of Matt Clement or David Wells, one of the 2 in the ALDS.
None during the regular season.
None during the regular season at all. And so he hit it, and he hit this home run off of one of the best closers in baseball at the time, Brad Lidge, who had just in the NLCS given up what a mammoth home run by Albert Pujols. And you could see his teammate at the time, Andy Pettitte, saying to his other Astros teammates, like, that is the farthest ball I've ever seen hit. And I think that broke Brad Lidge, which made the Game 2 moment happen for Scotty Podsednik, because as we were talking about, he hit 0 home runs. He wasn't a home run hitter during the regular season. He was a stolen base guy. They got him because he stole 70 bases the year before with the Brewers. And when he hit that ball, I was like, all right, that's in the gap. All right, cool, we're good. And when it traveled out, I was like, oh my God. I was kind of like Aaron Rowan and Brian Anderson at the time. They didn't believe it. Oh my God. And when it happened, I was like, yes, euphoria. And it's like you're saying, Sean, it was in the rain. And once that happened, I had relief. And I was like, if this is going to happen, the moments like that are why it's going to happen when we're up 2-0, now we're going to Houston to try to get the other couple games. And so when that happened, I was like, I'm relieved, but also Houston's still tough. As we talked about earlier, they have Roy Oswalt still on the bump. Brandon back in game 4. If they got back to game 5, I think Roger Clemens would have pitched, or Andy Pettitte. So you never have time of moment of relaxing until the game 4 victory.
I want to ask this question. I didn't prep you for this, so if it's tough to do, is Scott Podsednik one of the most 3 important White Sox from that team? Because I didn't know this, 286, 397, 551 in the 2005 postseason. He had a double, 3 triples, 2 homers, 6 stolen bags, caught stealing 3 times, but still twice as many stolen bags as caught stealing, 7 walks, 10 strikeouts.
You mean that year?
That year, in 2005. Like
the whole
year?
That
postseason. No, postseason.
Okay.
He has to be one of the most important players of that team. And I think that, it's underrated how important he was.
Jermaine Dye was the MVP. Paul Konerko could have won it. So could have Joe Creedy. But when you get, and then Mark Buehrle pitching in game 2, starting in game 2, and then closing in game 3,
2 days
I would
later,
put those guys ahead of Podsednik. But he did hit the walk-off home run, and those numbers are outstanding versus the pitchers I just listed. There weren't crumb bums out there. Those are people who should be in the Hall of Fame. Andy Pettitte and Roger Clemens, and Roy Oswalt is one of the best pitchers in baseball at the time.
Yeah, no, he did this in the Angels series and Red Sox series too. That's his entire 2005 run. The final question: should Game 1 get some love? I mean, it is a 5-3 game. That's the only comfortable win that they kind of had.
Comfortable?
2
runs?
Well, it was 2 runs in Game 3 too, but it was over 14 innings. So I mean, the other game's 7-6. The other game's 1-0. Is it just because there was no runs scored by the Astros after the 4th inning, or I think it's 3rd inning? I mean, they just were pretty shut down after that. No runs after the 3rd.
It's probably just more so the lack of those moments that are stamped on your brain, right? I mean, obviously, game 2, we just discussed it. Game 3 with the Blum walk-off, and then game 4 is the game where they win the World Series. I don't know even probably how many diehard White Sox fans would rank game 1 in the same stratosphere as those other 3.
All I remember, Roger Clemens started that game. Jermaine Dye hit a home run off of him, and then he left the game with an injury. I thought his feelings were hurt because Jermaine Dye crushed that ball to right field. Is that the same game that Jermaine Dye acted as if he got? No, that was game 2. The thing that set up Paul Konerko's grand slam was when Jermaine Dye acted as if he got hit in the forearm, but it actually hit his bat, which he got to go to first. Paul Konerko's up next, and he deposited that ball. But
it was yet another AJ style moment.
It was, and it doesn't really get a lot of shine.
Well, it doesn't get a lot of shine except for a article published on April 30th of 2020 by Vinnie Duber.
Oh,
look at that!
Wow. Remember how I spent my pandemic shutdown?
There's a quote from Jermaine Dye. I think pulling an AJ Pierzynski trick by acting like I got hit with the ball, and then Paul Konerko hitting a grand slam. It felt like I got hit, and then Dye followed up responding to Pierzynski, who shouted "cheater." So there you go. I think you thought AJ Pierzynski because you wrote it. That JD told you that he felt like AJ there. So that is our top 10 White Sox games of all time. Your list might be different. Let us know. We have our top 25 games of Chicago's history as well up at allchgo.com. Herb's also going to be a part of the exclusive podcast that goes through that top 25. So if you do have thoughts, leave them in the comment section. Let us know what your top 10 White Sox games are of all time. That's Vinnie Duber, our CHGO White Sox beat writer. That's Herb Lawrence, our CHGO White Sox community leader. I'm Sean Anderson. Thank you to Sarah for producing the show. Hit the thumbs up button. Make sure to check out the other teams' top 10 games of all time because it's a fun topic. We'll see you later.
We all silly like the mayor.